Thanks so much for staying with us on SABC News. Now, Jacques Pauw has alleged in a newly published book that President Jacob Zuma failed to submit his tax returns for at least the first 5 years of his presidency. The book also alleges that SARS Commissioner Tom Moyane helped President Zuma get rid of a 63 million rand tax bill, and that President Zuma kept receiving a secret monthly paycheck from a friend despite being paid by the state as president. The South African Revenue Service has said it will consider taking legal action against the author. Sandile Memela from SARS joins me from our Pretoria studios now. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. What legal action are you considering taking, and on what basis?
Well, thank you very much for the platform and opportunity. This is greatly appreciated, and it's a gesture that we see as an extension of our urgent need to inform and educate the citizenry of this country. Of course, we are all aware that the author and publication, that is Jacques Pauw and the Sunday Times respectively, have actually contravened the Tax Administration Act, specifically Section 69, which prohibits anyone from divulging or debating or discussing a specific taxpayer's confidential information. And this is what they have done in the past week since the story broke on Sunday. So as SARS, we see this as a clear contravention of the law, and because we are the tax administration, we cannot be seen to be just folding our arms when this sort of thing happens. We want to reiterate that and emphasize that the publication of such information is unlawful. Much as you too will be aware that a thought or an intention is not an act in itself, as SARS, we are seeking legal counsel on what next steps to take as far as this contravention is concerned. Let's be clear that this is actually opening up the author and the publication to a criminal and or civil claim. And as SARS, we're talking to our legal counsel to see what steps can be taken to implement that prosecution process if need be. And of course, we want to establish how and when did the author and the publication obtain this information, and we take them to court. Now, let me emphasize that information pertaining to any taxpayer's affairs, be it the president of a country or a taxi driver who earns more than 350,000 rands per annum, can only be divulged or revealed through a judicial process. And even if there is a case in court, the information can only be divulged or shared or revealed when you have obtained a court of the High Court, an order of the High Court. And in this instance, this hasn't happened.
I'm just trying to understand the technicalities of this. So you cannot discuss a taxpayer's affairs as SARS, but you're saying this person divulged or revealed information about President Jacob Zuma, almost as though perhaps that information was true and perhaps he didn't pay his tax for 5 years. How do we believe what SARS is saying when your response to our questions perhaps about the president's tax affairs is that you cannot discuss his tax affairs?
Well, look, the situation as it stands now, and this is the reality, is that both the author of the book and the publication, a national publication, have allegedly revealed confidential taxpayers' information. This is against the law. And unfortunately, as SARS, we have to look at this. However, as the tax administration, we are not in a position to confirm or deny whether what they have published is true or not, because by so doing, we too will be contravening the law. And it is for this reason that we are engaging our legal counsel to decide on the way forward. This is a highly technical matter, but what we want to emphasize is that revelation or publishing of a taxpayer's information is confidential and is not allowed by law. And that is why we want to talk to our lawyers and then chart the way forward.
How do we balance the Tax Administration Act, which you've spoken about, which prohibits the disclosure of taxpayer information by a SARS official or former SARS official, with a very real need as citizens to know whether our president is implicated in so-called tax dodging while maintaining the law?
Yeah, of course, this is a very complicated matter, but at the same time, one can say that we appreciate the need for the public to know, and it's what the media calls a public interest. But like as far as the president is concerned, one can say he was in parliament yesterday and answered various questions that were put to him, some of course pertaining to this issue, and one doesn't have the mandate to speak on his behalf. However, much as the public needs to know, we need to acknowledge and recognize that we live in a constitutional democracy. Everybody is equal before the law. The president, of course, is expected to pay his taxes like everybody else. However, SARS cannot tell or discuss whether he has or has not. And the thing about it all is the law says no one should divulge or discuss that information in public. As the enforcer of the Tax Administration Act, it is for this reason that we are looking into the matter to see what needs to be done. However, we must not forget that there are various allegations in the book and in the publication itself that were made against the Commissioner of SARS, Mr. Tom Moyane, including that he is aiding the president to avoid paying his taxes. Now, that would be a serious offense, and then again, it's also alleged that the commissioner has paged a number of people who are now former SARS employees who were involved in the administering of the tax laws upon the president. And of course, we can't get into the details, but that's the thing, that we need to be seen as this organization to be upholding the law, and we believe that this would actually enhance and rebuild the trust that we need to have between the taxpayer and SARS.
I'm glad you brought up Commissioner Moyane as well as the trust that needs to happen. We're seeing that there's a 50 billion rand tax shortfall. Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba during the medium-term budget saying that there seems to be some people holding back on paying taxes, not widespread, but there is a trust deficit that is coming into play. How do you as SARS then, with these allegations and rumours floating around and this massive tax shortfall, convince citizens that their taxes, when they get paid, are going to go to the right thing, and everyone, regardless of their position, needs to pay their taxes or face consequences?
Look, the issue of the 50 billion shortfall in terms of revenue has been specifically addressed by the Minister of Finance, Mr. Malusi Gigaba, and I want to believe that he made it very clear that has got a lot to do with the economy. We will admit that we are going through a rough patch in terms of the economy, and this has, of course, resulted in job losses, unemployment, and less personal income tax being paid. And yes, there is a perception that this is the responsibility of SARS or its alleged failure. We want to dismiss that media created perception with, I think, dismiss it with the contempt it deserves, because it actually shows that people do not understand how the whole process works. When, for instance, the minister goes to parliament and makes the declaration of whether he rises or downsizes the revenue collection, this is not the sole decision of SARS. It's done in consultation with, of course, the Treasury which is the Ministry of Finance and the South African Reserve Bank, and of course a strong delegation from SARS, who then deliberate on what should happen as far as that is concerned. This talk of tax revolution, if one may call it that, is highly irresponsible, because if you think about it, it is impractical. We are concerned because we observe that there are declining levels of tax compliance. This has got absolutely nothing to do with protest or a revolution. This is simply because these are tough times and the people would rather hold on to their money so that they provide a better quality of life for their families and themselves. And of course, there is a number of people who may be owing SARS from previous years. You may find that these are people who are now without a job. But as SARS, our duty is to make sure that we educate the people of this country about their fiscal responsibility. And of course, it's to provide a good service in terms of collecting the revenue. And we are proud to announce that almost 5 million people so far, since the beginning of the tax season in April to date, have come forward to submit their tax returns. And it's something that we are proud of, and our role, if I must emphasize, is just to collect the revenue, and then as soon as we are done with that, we are not the ones who are responsible for how the money is spent.
Mr.
We hand it over to...
That's all we have time for. My apologies for cutting you off. It's time for us to take a short ad break.